So today I wanted to talk about backwards compatibility and specifically on the next gen hardware. And originally I was going to do this as an off the cuff video, but instead I decided to turn it into a discussion. So today I've got three guests with me. So why don't they go ahead and introduce themselves? I guess we'll start off with Daybreaker.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And then after that we have Brandel.
Hi.
Well, okay then. And then obviously we have, or lastly we have Mr. James.
It's actually Miss.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Anyway, so why don't we just get right into it with our first question? What are your thoughts on backwards compatibility or lack thereof this generation?
Well, I wouldn't say there's a like thereof, considering Microsoft does it though. At least
I would
for
say I say lack
If you're
thereof
talking on
more
the
so in on
PlayStation
like, other
Spectrum,
ends.
then yeah.
Yeah.
and for Sony's side, it actually really sucks considering the hardware wise, it's capable of handling PS1, PS2, obviously. So if the PS3 could do it, then why not the PS4? I'm like, come on, it should be cheap by now. And also the fact that we can use our old stuff from PS3, stuff we downloaded, that's just flicking the balls.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I honestly thought that that would have been like the easiest thing to port over for them.
Was
Um,
what PS3 downloads or?
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
Well,
because
didn't they kept saying the PS3's like cell
No, not the
processing? and all
PS3. We're
that
talking
crap?
about the PS1 and PS2 classics.
Oh yeah, there's no excuse for those. This is absolutely no defense for that. I agree.
yeah, I think some of the games that were on PS2 classics were already on the PS3 that later ended up getting ported over to PS2 to PS4.
hmm
Um, that's another thing too, like PS2 to PS4. I guess the idea for it was interesting, but it not as good as something like let me just slide in my fucking disc into the console.
Well, it would have been fine if I didn't have to pay like $10 to $15 for ancient games like Max Payne and stuff. Remember that was like $15.
Well,
I
Ridiculous.
think.
and
Oh,
it,
go
and it
ahead,
was
David.
also kind of ridiculous too because they implemented a system similar to that with the PS3, and a lot of those games didn't carry over. So you could have downloaded PS2 games on your PS3, but most of them, if I recall, were never ported over to the PS2 to PS4, and if they were, you had to rebuy them. So it's kind of like a bit milking the cow for what it's worth.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sony
Okay,
was trying to swindle you.
in their
Yeah.
defense though, for PS2 games, they did add enhancements to them. Like, of course, you had your trophy support. That's whatever, but they did like increase the resolution or whatever knickknacks inside the game. So, granted, yeah, I don't think it should be $15 though, but at least it's more justifiably so. Because how they enhance the experience, quote unquote.
I would say, at least in that regard too, like there were definitely games that they had on like the PS3 list by comparison to the PS4 that I think were a lot more appealing. And I would also say too, like if they had different games, like maybe say games that were just harder to get a hold of, I think some people would have been fine with the price points that they had for those games,
Yeah, more appealing.
as opposed to like games that you could easily get a hold of both on the PS3 or even physically on like Amazon or like at your local retro shop.
Actually, you just reminded me of something else.
Mhm.
I don't know why they didn't do this. I hate that you're basically restricted to their choice of what they're making compatible. I
Yeah.
don't like that. I don't know why they didn't make it to where let's say I have my Tomb Raider 1 disc, right? My PS1 disc.
Mhm.
Why can't I just pop it in the PS4? It downloads the disc, like all the data into an application, and I play it like a digital game. Why was that not
Hold
done?
that thought because that's gonna be a later question.
Is that on the
Yeah,
list?
it's gonna be a later question, so hold on to that thought.
My point
Actually,
stands. This shit is dumb.
yeah, I do want to ask though, since we kind of talked a little bit about like the PS4 and stuff like that, like switching over to like Gears on Microsoft's end, where their approach was, I would say, arguably better by comparison to what Sony did.
Oh yeah, they're definitely beating Sony in backwards.
Where, you know, like the games actually got some major enhancements, especially if you played on like X, but also just the fact that like you could use your original disc and insert it into the console and it would work if the game if that game was patched in for the support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sony, take notes.
Hey, I should know it. We rather on Sony a lot though, but let's not forget about Nintendo because they actually works with the shit.
Ooh, you want to talk? Hold on, you want to talk scam artist company? It's definitely. Yeah, I see how much those NES games are. Why would you pay for those? They're so. There's. How much are they? Like again, Brandon? Like how much?
With NES, you have to get the online service to even play the NES games.
Yeah, you can fuck off. That's
yeah,
ridiculous.
they're free after you pay for online.
So they're not free. It's like PS Plus, how they say, "Oh, the game's free." Like, no, you still have to pay a fee to get to the game.
Yeah, because
so it's more like a streaming service, right?
I believe. Well,
no,
it's an application.
Yes.
It's kind of, but not really, because it's an application where all the data for the game's library that you have is present through that application. So it's not like you're having to constantly download data from your internet connection to use it. But I do agree that it is a little ridiculous because not only, I mean, you can say in Nintendo's defense, their online subscription is the cheapest option when it comes to the three major companies' consoles. In terms of a paid subscription, you know, obviously the cheapest and most efficient option would be to get something like Steam where you could play for free. But with the online, you know, with the NES stuff, like one, you're limited to whenever they decide to update and add more games. Most of the classic stuff that a lot of people know and enjoy, like the Castlevania games, the Contra games, you know, there's a lot of stuff missing from that library that a lot of people from, you know, who grew up with the NES would know and recognize. Now, I don't know if it's probably a licensing thing. I mean, Konami just released, you know, 3 separate collections, one for Contra, one for Castlevania, and then, of course, their arcade collection that has stuff like Gradius and Life Force on it. So it could be a licensing thing. I'm not really 100% sure, but there is a lot of notable stuff that is absent.
Have to be licensing considering because if shit like always get delisted and whatnot, or it's like hard to get, then I'm pretty sure it's a licensing issue.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at it, it's like all the Mega Man games aren't there. You know, Contra, Castlevania, none of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games are there. Say what you will about them, whether you like them or whether you don't. You know, they have some of their big hitters, like of course Zelda and Mario. You know, that's a given. But when it comes to, you know, a lot of the really popular third-party stuff, it's just not there. So, you know, I don't necessarily, you know. I think it's a little bit better because Nintendo's kind of been really weird. They're kind of almost like in the same boat as what PlayStation's been in terms of it, because it's like, you know, with the Wii U, with the Wii, you know, with the 3DS, you know, you could download certain virtual console stuff. Like they had the virtual console to where you could download NES, Game Boy, you know, but it varied from system to system. So it was like GBA games were locked behind the Wii U market, while Super Nintendo games were locked behind a specific model of 3DS.
Yeah, I want to actually add on to that though, because from like say the Wii to Wii U, you have to like re-buy those games, but
exactly
if you have them,
well, and Wii. I do believe there was a system, I might be misremembering this, but I do believe there was a system to transfer everything that you had on the Wii to your Wii U, but it was a one-time transfer. You couldn't do it again. So
I don't get that one-time stuff. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Well, even with the 3DS, you're limited to how many times you can transfer data between 3DSs. So if you were like me, who went through the ringer of upgrading to every different model that they had, you know, I basically, you know, kind of screwed myself if in case my 3DS ever goes out and I want to transfer to another one. You know, I'm very limited to how many more times I can even do that, you know.
That's really dumb compared to like Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah, which just lets you do it, you know.
because I had to do this when my 360 crashed. The 360, you can buy a transfer like cable adapter, and you can transfer like all your stuff from one hard drive to another for the 360.
And later models, you could literally just pop in the hard drive from different 360. It's just like obviously the same model of it,
Yeah.
and just continue on from there. You just
You
gotta
could
of course
do it
re-log
infinite.
in.
There was no limit to doing it.
With Sony, if you try to put in your hard drive, your old hard drive into a new PS3, it will erase everything. So that's bullshit, of course.
Yeah, of course they do have the means to do data backups and everything like that. Granted, if you have the means to being able to port that. So I do appreciate that there are means through Microsoft and Sony's consoles that allow you to back up without any cost to you. But Nintendo has this weird thing where it's like, oh no, you can only do this so many times. You know.
Yeah, and remember though, if you criticize Nintendo, you're a hater.
Oh, I know. Well, isn't that the same about any company though?
No, but with
Yeah,
Nintendo's
pretty
case, though,
much.
they do quite a bit of anti-consumer stuff, just as much as Microsoft and Sony, but they don't get called out for it. Unless it's something like really big, like say like the whole creators program thing. Like if it affects your money, people will bitch about it. If it doesn't, then no, nobody will care.
So,
Pretty much.
anyway, I think we should probably transition over to the second question. Brandel, if you want to go ahead and read that one.
Do I have to?
Do you have to?
Okay, let's see. Microsoft had a very interesting approach to backwards compatibility by having only certain games to be compatible with some enhancements. Do you think this prefer? Oh, sorry. Do you think this prefer this approach, or do you?
Dom typoed that.
Oops.
Do you prefer this approach or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
I'll say that I'm in favor of it. I think it would be nicer. I don't again, you know, the thing about it is that I don't, aside from like the legality of like emulation and like backwards compatibility, you know, I know it has to be like why we're only getting certain things is because there's probably licensing involved, and you know these third parties are going to want something in return for it, I'm sure. You know, I don't know if there would be a system. It would be nice to like say that they offer the backwards compatibility. But like, let's say for example, like you have an Xbox original game, like Mech Assault, for example. Mech Assault's a really popular title that for some reason did not end up on the backwards compatibility with Xbox One. Well, let's say that you could play it via your Xbox One. It just doesn't have the enhancements or the achievement support that you would get. It's just like a one-to-one, you know, emulated whatever. You know, you just get the data from it. Like, I think that that would be a better approach, in my opinion, to backwards compatibility. That means that your entire library isn't obsolete, you know, and that it would give you a reason to actually not have to hold on to some of those older consoles, you know. Especially I've been finding out that I guess the original Xboxes are notorious for not having longevity. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like it would be nice to be able to play whatever you want, but as they like, you know, work with these third party companies and everything like that, they can get those enhancements, they can get the achievement support and things like that to make it a little bit more involved, I guess.
Yeah, I was. Oh, you wanted to go?
Yeah, I want to get my piece before you start rambling.
Okay.
Yeah, I do like the idea of how Microsoft does it though, because it gives you enhancements, this, and that though. But I'm more in favor of hardware, backwards compatibility, because
Just put it
that
in,
way,
not have them
yeah,
choose.
that you won't have the issue of running into licensing issues, because if you have the game, then no, they can do jack shit about it. It's hardware, not
I
emulation.
think, just real quick, I think an easier way to do it, if they wanted to enhance certain games, that's fine. But I agree that they should still have hardware as well. So if you have the game already and it doesn't have enhancements, you just won't have the enhancements. That should be how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Was that like, because I had talked to Daybreaker about this a couple of times actually prior to this discussion. That like, ideally, what I would like to see is like if all the games were like backwards compatible, whether it be on Xbox or PlayStation, just let me throw in the disc for whatever console it is and just play it as is. And if those companies or license holders or whatever want to step in and add in the enhancements and allow Sony to, put in that, or Sony or Microsoft to put in that like patch into their consoles to give like added benefits like frame rate and visual enhancements and stuff like that, then they should be allowed to. But otherwise, let me play the games that I have via the disc that I have, because there are going to be those games where they're never going to, if they go on this case by case basis, they're never going to get that support, unfortunately. Or for whatever reason, certain games will get priority over others. Like we saw that a lot with the Xbox One, where some versions of games got priority over other versions of games that were arguably better in performance and visual enhancements and stuff like that. Excuse me. So I don't know. Like I think that at least in that case, it would make sense for them to do the hardware more so than the case by case enhancement basis.
Yeah, that's all what happened with
make sure the hardware is. Oh, go ahead.
Saw what happened with the PS2, right? Like, you drop that shit hard unless certain companies want to have the shit ported over.
Mm.
Like, for example, Ace Combat, I think that was the last game that was PS2 to PS4.
Yep.
It was the last game that was PS2 to PS4, and it was also behind a pre-order bonus to make matters worse. So you couldn't even, like, if you wanted to get it after Ace Combat 7 came out, you couldn't get it.
Oof. I feel like Sony had enthusiasm for this whole PS2, PS4 thing, and then they dropped it. I'm sorry, nobody cares or talks about it anymore, and they don't support it much.
Yeah, it's partially their fault though, because they're pretty expensive though. I mean, they could go up to what, $20, right? Or is it just 15 baseline?
Well,
Yeah,
I
also
think the
part of the
cheapest I've
problem
seen is
too.
like $10.
Yeah, that's a good price.
I think
Well,
part of the problem too, though, is that look at the kinds of games that they were putting onto that platform.
They had a few good ones, but most of them were either obscure or not very popular.
Yeah, and remember they had that hashtag going PS2 to PS4, and they didn't do anything with it. And I'm sure you all have probably tweeted out about that before or said
It
something
kind of
on
feels
other
like the
places.
same thing that happened to the Vita in a
Mhm.
way. Kind of feels the same
The
way.
Vita
They supported it
was-
and they dropped it.
Well, the Vita was mostly their fault, the reason why it died, because they were technically monopolizing the Vita itself, because by them not having any third-party support hardware-wise, I mean, they kind of screwed it over, because you can't get memory cards for anything.
Yeah,
Yep.
not without going through the whole process of flash modding it and everything like that. Vitas are great if you're part of the homebrew community like myself, but that's a whole subject. I know I've ranted about that in our podcast before at some point or another. So yeah, my thing with the PS2 to PS4 is James had the right of it. It's just these obscure titles. They weren't going for the heavy hitters. What I think they should have done is shoot for the really big multiplayer games from that era and have online support with them. Give me Jack X, give me Twisted Metal Black Online,
here's
give
the thing
me
about Jack X that pisses me off, by the way.
Mhm.
So they gave us. There's a PS4 port. Oh no, no. Yeah, you're right. Never mind. I thought it was a PS4 port. It is just PS2 to PS4. Yeah, no online. Why? Why not?
In comparison to with Microsoft
reason.
system, I think they had the online restored for the games that got enhanced.
Only
right?
for the 360, the
Yeah,
OG
360
Xbox.
games.
I actually had to confirm this because I had a discussion with the local shop owner, because I was under the assumption that the OG Xbox games were getting online support. I had heard that. No, see what it is that like with certain games, like let's say
Red Sky, or was it?
Crimson Skies, or
Yeah.
let's say the more recent one, Unreal Championship 2. You could theoretically hook via LAN your Xbox One to an OG Xbox. So it was kind of like this whole thing where, like, I guess they had support. It's like, so you could literally have like an OG Xbox, a 360, and an Xbox One all connected via LAN playing the same game. So they dropped the ball there. And I think and this is going to maybe sound a little controversial, but like to Nintendo's credit with the NES library, with the multiplayer games, they did add online functionality. So you can play multiplayer regardless of if you're in the same room or you're 2 houses over. So while the NES side of things is very limited, and I would much rather see them do like N64, library and give me some of the multiplayer experiences from there. It is still a step in the right direction in terms of that. So I will give them that credit because, you see with these backwards compatible games, you can't play online with them, and I think that would be great because, once a lot of these servers went down, especially since the original Xbox Live service has been discontinued for many years. Same thing with the PS2. You'll be hard pressed to find any games that are supported anymore. It's just kind of one of those things where it would give players a chance to maybe play something that they didn't get to.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to note real quick. I
Definitely.
imagine restoring servers that shut down like about 20 years ago or around that ish era. It'll be harder to bring up again or recreate versus just creating a new server. So I imagine they didn't want to take the investment if not many people would play it because let's be real here. These are Xbox One games, so people probably won't be playing as much as a Microsoft probably hope. So I thought they would probably throw in extra resources, and making the servers come back. It would be nice. It would be lovely if they do it. Don't get me wrong, but I doubt they would do it.
I think at most maybe peer to peer, even though everybody and their mother hates that.
Yeah, I think it's peer to peer in that era. So
Well, that would be the only compromise they're going to give, even though I cannot stand that stupid system.
Yeah.
Just one other thing about like what you had said earlier too, James, about like the types of games that they were putting on PS2 to PS4, and I kind of want to throw this into the like Microsoft side of things as well. I feel like at least in the case of PS2 to PS4, like the biggest problem was that they didn't have like these bigger titles,
It's
and
kind of
like
like
people were
kind of
asking
like their
for like
PS Plus. Same
yeah.
thing, same problem. Games nobody asked for, and they just put them on.
Right, and people were definitely asking for a lot of specific titles. I know, like when they were still throwing around that hashtag, at least, I was asking for the Onimusha trilogy to be on there, just because like I nobody knew if they were gonna ever remaster any of the games, and surprisingly enough, they did the
I
first
did.
game, but yeah, surprisingly enough that like they did the first game, but it's like still it's like we could have had those games a lot sooner if they had arranged that. Now, looking over at like Microsoft's end, the thing that confuses me a lot is some of the games that they picked out doesn't necessarily like make sense for 360 or even on one. Like for example, like their last update they had the first three Splinter Cell games plus Double Agent when there's already 360 versions of those games via the HD collection and
The thing is though, people kind of prefer the original, and in case of Double Agent, it's not the same game.
yeah, but still though, you get where I'm coming from with that, right? It's like that's 4 slots for 4 different Xbox original games that could have been added on there.
So technicality though, that's not the first time that happened because we have plenty of collections that were either released originally on whatever platform, and then we got a remaster of them later down the line. So it's not necessarily the biggest deal in the world, me personally.
No, yeah, I get that. I just like I said, it is more so confusing as to like how they went about it. Like they had Silent Hill HD collection, for example. Which to my understanding, the 360 version was like the worst way to play Silent Hill HD. Even though that HD collection is botched to begin with, like it doesn't make sense why they didn't just go for the original Xbox version or even add in like Silent Hill 4. But it's a lot of it just kind of boils down to the choice of games, and that applies both to Sony and Microsoft in this case. It's like we need a specific choice of games that I think at least would probably interest people a lot more.
I think that's actually going to be the key word for the PS5 and whatever the new Xbox is going to be. I think that's going to be the new. Well, hopefully, if they were smart, that would be their new marketing focus for backwards. It's the player's choice what they want to play. That's backwards, as in the hardware stuff. I think if Sony does that, that would give them a serious leg up on Microsoft because that's so far Microsoft has them beat on backwards by a mile.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If they and Sony's going to copy them in some fashion because that's how competition works.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they emphasize choice with using hardware, I think that'll put them in the lead.
Mm.
But they have to do in my opinion, they have to do every previous PlayStation generation. You cannot skip shit. It is ridiculous.
Mm.
This stuff should have been a standard a long time ago anyway.
I would say we should probably move on to number 3 then. Do you want to go ahead and read that one off, James?
Sure. Oh, you or me now? I didn't know that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the info. As a follow-up to the previous question, both the Xbox, Scarlet, okay, that's what it's called, and PS5 are having native backwards compatibility with the Xbox One and PS4 games, respectively. In your opinion, do you think they need to include more than just the current consoles? As I said before, yeah, PlayStation from 4 to 1, where are they? Xbox, same thing, from Scarlet to the original. There's no excuse at this point.
I think they are actually going to add in 360 and Xbox original one because it did say like all games that were playable on Xbox One will be or should be playable. That's their goal. At least.
I do believe that I was saving that. I wanted to mention that in the last question, but I have, from what I understood, they have gone on record and said that that's the goal. Is that everything that they've released thus far on the Xbox One in terms of backwards compatibility should carry over to Project Scarlet.
Okay.
But
Sony needs to get the memo then.
Oh
yeah. It'd be a scare thing for Sony to do if they put the PSP and PS Vita as backwards compatibility. Like
I was thinking about that today, actually. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Wait, you mean put that on the console?
Yeah, on PS5, just for.
Oh, Star Wars Battlefront. We about to play it.
Well, the weird thing is that I believe I've talked to you guys about this before, but for the viewers at home, I'll refresh people's memories. When Parappa the Rapper Remastered came out, data miners and hackers found out that they were using a custom-made PSP emulator through the PlayStation 4 to upscale and clean up the PSP version of Parappa the Rapper. So it is indeed possible. It would be something that I would absolutely love to see. Now, in terms of actual physical hardware, probably not. But
that's not possible.
If they did allow, let's say those PSP games that I bought digitally, if they allowed me to play them on my PS5, I mean, that would definitely be a selling point. I mean, just the announcement, and that's kind of why I'm not necessarily on board with the PS5 just yet. The PS4 backwards compatibility is awesome. Let's be real. That's great that they're looking into that, but if they do make the announcement that PS1, PS2, or anything like that is going to be playable on that system, it would definitely be a selling point for me, because you look at all the ways to, if you wanted to record actual hardware, it's a pain in the ass to do it and to get the best possible video quality. Did a whole freaking video on that with a friend, so to have an all-in-one system like that is running through HDMI and you can get decent quality footage from these older systems and from the library that you own, it'd be great.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too with the video quality. Personally, I like going back to my PS2 games a lot, and one of the things that makes it really hard to do that though is just having to convert it from component to HDMI. Because you can get a cheapo converter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to look great on a modern 60 hertz monitor or higher than that.
That, or in my experience, it'll play nice with your Elgato.
Yeah, and I know we had talked about certain upscalers like the FrameMeister, and you had mentioned OSSC, which I've been kind of interested in, and I'm may really consider it if like say PS5 is only backwards compatible with the PS4 and nothing more. Just because it's like, I want to be able to play these older games and also be able to look at them and possibly even record them in 1080p or
Yeah.
at least 720p. Yeah, sure, it's upscaled, but at least it'll look better. And like thinking about that too, as far as like backwards compatibility, and that could also, I could look at that with like the perspective of the original Xbox. Although the original Xbox does come out a lot nicer in comparison because it goes up to 1080i, I believe, on components. So yeah, I just think for more so for convenience sake, I would personally prefer to just have that stuff available for all the consoles. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick PS2 just because I kind of like going back to that library in particular.
For me, it would be definitely be PS1 and PS2. PS1 because certain selection of games I do play, I play it frequently. Like for example, well at the time at least, Mega Man X, 4 and 5, and of course Resident Evil 2 and 3. Just
Yeah.
a handful that I like to go back and play every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think like when we think about like them having the current gen backwards compatible, like I think that's kind of to be expected at this point. I also think I heard like some kind of rumor about like the PS5 supposedly upgrading the PS4 version to the PS5 version if it's going to get a port. But I'm not sure if that was just
That
a rumor or
Okay,
if
two
that was
things on that
confirmed.
though. One, I disagree on it. It should be expected that we get backwards compatibility with current gen, with next gen or whatever, because that didn't happen with the PS4 and Xbox One initially. Two, that did happen with the PS4 and PS3, where you can actually buy or upgrade, quote unquote, to the PS4 version if you bought the PS3 version of said game. Like for example, AC4, you could technically upgrade to the PS4 version just for $10.
There was a thing like that. What was it? I think it was like for COD Ghosts. If you upgraded it, you literally had like this thin ass box, and it just had a voucher in it or whatever, from what I heard.
Man, I remember that game.
Yeah,
And all you do is just use the PS3 disc, and it's pretty much the
I
same
want to
thing.
say the first couple launch games had that. It was like Battlefield 4, Assassin's Creed 4, Call of Duty Ghosts, and I want to say there were like one or two others if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there were a few others, but I don't remember from the top of my head which game it was which.
With those vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
I have never seen those.
yeah, I have still have my PS3 copy, and I still have the voucher for the PS4 version though. I tried to get it to work though, but for some reason it doesn't work. I'm assuming it must have an expiration date because I entered the code way back when, and I have the thing listed on my profile,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't like register the $10 thing. So I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, James, did you want anything to add to this, or?
No, you guys pretty much covered it.
Okay, I'll read off the next question. Let me just
Oh no.
through that. Oh, shut up. So, as another follow-up question, what system would you like to see the most backwards compatible via PS5? Aside from the PS4 backwards compatibility, and then vice versa with the Microsoft console, aside from the Xbox One, 360 and original Xbox backwards compatibility. Like, which
I'll
one
be
would you want to
honest.
see more?
For Sony, PS3 for sure. Definitely PS3. There's a lot of good games that are just kind of buried on that system that you can't do anything with anymore.
Yeah, that is true.
Like
But
you know what sucks? For example,
Mhm.
I missed out on Resistance since the servers are dead.
You
No
can't
point
do
playing.
multiplayer.
You can't play the multiplayer, which I heard was amazing, but you can't do that now.
I don't
So if
think
they
you
were
can
to
do
do
online
stuff,
co-op anymore either.
yeah, it's dead, which sucks. So I'm like, yeah, that's why like stuff on the PS3 feels like it's the most what's the word, squandered maybe.
You mean
Yeah.
for like online potential, right?
Yeah, because like Lost Planet's another example. Yeah, I don't think you can play that online anymore either.
You can.
Can you?
Yeah,
Too?
the server's still up.
I'm actually kind of concerned about like what is it, like Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker because we still haven't finished our playthrough of that.
It's a
But I
long
would
game.
love to be able to like continue that and not have to worry about if the servers are gonna go down on the PS3 if it was available on like the next PlayStation.
That's another thing too. If they have PS3, they prioritize that. They better make sure the servers for any games that run from the PS3 better work for the PS5. I don't want no excuses with that.
If they should, considering if Microsoft doesn't done it.
Yeah, if Microsoft can do it, Sony can do it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah,
Also,
And, also for Xbox, since that was also on the list, I want to say 360. There's a lot of very old 360 games they still don't have on the list. Like Fable 2 is one of them. They just very recently put it up.
Yeah, they added all the Fable games, so you can play all those now.
Yeah, they just recently. I just remember. Like, hold on, wait. I know Ren because Ren got Fable 2 because I told him the series is good.
yeah,
I on this real quick though.
Yeah, sure thing.
Just get my point out the way. I already answered this question on the last one. I said PS1 and PS2 respectively. But from Microsoft side, I would say the original Xbox more so than 360 because there's a lot of games that are not even ported over yet, like with Target, for example. Two, a lot of those games actually age better than most retro games, to date. From that era, from Xbox, PS2, and upwards. So I think it would be nice to see those transition over to a current gen.
I do agree with that as well.
Yeah, I would say like I'm kind of on the same like picture as far as like PlayStation stuff is concerned. Like with Brandon, like PS1, PS2. Definitely wouldn't mind saying PS3, of course, like because there's a ton of games I wouldn't mind going back to on PS3. Like hell, I think me and Brandon would probably go back to like Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma for the co-op because that shit was fun.
Yeah,
back
I
when
want
we
my
used to play it a lot.
I want my flat.
and then as far as like Microsoft is concerned, I have very little experience with the 360, but for the original Xbox, I'm very interested as far as like what kinds of games are on there, and I definitely would like to expand my library in the future if possible. And if there were more games available to play for original Xbox backwards compatibility, I would definitely want to see that more so than 360, in my personal opinion.
I think for me with PlayStation, the PlayStation side, I think the thing I want most, it's a very close half and half. I would say though PS2 for me because it's a little bit more nostalgic, and that's the system I grew up playing the most. Like I kind of didn't really jump into the PS3 era until late. It was probably about halfway through its life cycle by the time I got my first PS3. So I would say PS2 for me would definitely be the PlayStation side of things. Not to say that PS3 wouldn't be a welcome addition as well. And of course, I would have to say for Microsoft, it would be more OG Xbox compatibility. Like there are some great games and enhanced versions of games that were made available on the OG Xbox, such as Tenchu, Return from Darkness, Genma Onimusha. It's just there's so many great games on the original Xbox that are just not getting the recognition that they need, and and they're throwing these like really obscure ones like the Indiana Jones game that I didn't even know existed until they were like, oh, this is backwards compatible now. It's like, who was asking for that?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing about the
I
King
didn't know
Kong
this
game.
either.
Like, I was saying the same thing about the King Kong game. I was like, who the fuck was asking for this?
Wait, that's a King Kong game?
Yeah,
Wait,
they
is this
put a
Peter
King.
Jackson's game?
Yeah, I think so. The one with I think Blackjack was in it or whatever.
It has the
Blackjack.
Jack Black.
Jack Black.
It has the best name for a game ever. It's Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's just like
that's actually the full title.
I was just like, I sat there and I was like, who the fuck was asking for this? Because like, and the one thing too, like I know you mentioned like Tenchu before. I know people have been asking for Tenchu to be backwards compatible on Microsoft's console because like
fuck on any console would be nice.
Tenchu would be nice.
Yeah, like I know James would really love to go back to Z just for the multiplayer.
Yep.
And
I need to go back to it
I would
myself.
actually be very interested to try out Return from Darkness because it actually looks really beautiful on the original Xbox. But yeah, I guess we're good to like move on to the next question. Daybreaker, you want to read off the next one?
Sure. Off the top of your head, what are some games you'd like to play via backwards compatibility? And I'm probably going to be in the same ballpark with James. Like, if they added PS3 backwards compatibility via the PS5, I would want to play, like, all the games that I missed online, like the SOCOM titles, the Resistance titles. I'd even want to give MAG a spin, because I never got to play a MAG. Bring back, Metal Gear 4's online. It was good.
That's something I missed out. I got mad about. Like, I want to be riding. Just or Liquid Snake.
You guys missed out on MG 02, right? Because
Yeah, it's
yes.
MGO2.
I did play
Oh my
it. I did
God.
play it. Very
I
briefly.
just
though.
want to walk backwards and laugh at people.
Oh, as
man.
Liquid
That
Ocelot.
is the best
Yeah.
taunt in a game I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and also it'd be
That was
nice.
the funniest fucking scene of that game, but
Also,
Yeah,
seeing
God.
people terrified of Raiden because he deflects bullets is really funny.
It'd also be really nice that we could get future soldiers.
yeah, can I get
back.
fucking Future Soldier to work? I paid for it on PC for myself and I think for 4 other people, and it still doesn't fucking work.
Yeah.
I'm mad.
I fucking knew that reaction. Dama knew that fucking reaction.
Well, it is on 360. Or
It is.
360
It
backwards
is.
compatibility for
It
Xbox One.
is.
Oh, how lovely. Hey, Sony.
So I want my fucking money back. I got it on sale, so I got it on sale twice, so I didn't spend that much on it. But
Well, we own it on PS3. I'm like, that better work on PS5.
yeah,
without me
I would
having
love to
repay
finish our
for that.
playthrough of that. Like that would be great. But somebody tagged me. I'll look at that later. But as far as like PS3 and like those games, like I'm also thinking about like some of the other games that I used to play, and like man, like I used to get into COD a lot, and one of the games that I loved in that series was Black Ops 1. I fucking love that game, and I would definitely go back to it especially like if all my DLC like carried over into like the PS5. Like yeah, I want to play. Like I fucking love that game.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Okay. Yeah, the games that one of those are going to be slightly obscure, considering like why would you go back to it? But this is like quite a few games I want. For starters, the Dragon Ball Z games from the PS2 era. Like good or bad though, I will all of them be playable because for starters, for the Budokai fans, like the third one, they got cooked hard for that game on PS3 when they remastered it because then I had the original soundtrack. And I want Vanilla Democrat 3 to be playable some way or fashion.
Oh, I see why you said why.
Brandon wants a challenge.
Yeah, for starters though, I haven't beaten that version, and I want to conquer it before I turn 50.
I was gonna say neither of most people, as it turns out.
Exactly. That's why I want to go back to it and actually conquer it.
Did that game have the hair physics, or was that only the beta version of DMC?
I think that was only the beta.
I forgot why they said they got rid of it, but that's a rant. Not rant. That's a tangent for another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Since you're talking about like some Capcom games, I would definitely love to go back to like Chaos Legion if that was like backwards compatible.
I want them
I
to add
haven't-
the Memento as well. Hunter Ground for the West.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they could put all the rare games, so people can't get scalped anymore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, see, that's what I was saying earlier for like PS2 to PS4. The part of the problem is that the prices sucked, and also too, aside from focusing on bigger hitting titles, like shit that's hard to get would have been more justifiable at those like $15 price points.
Oh, that just reminds me though, because this is the thing that Microsoft does with the backwards compatibility is they do reprints of certain games. Because I went to a game store, I don't remember where. I think it was either Best Buy or GameStop, whatever, some long ago.
Mm.
I saw Fallout 3 and I saw Fallout New Vegas with both Xbox 360 and Xbox One logo on top of the box. So imagine if Sony actually worked with publishers to get some of these older games or rare games reprinted for whatever platform they're going to use it for, backwards compatibility. That will make scalpers really salty.
Yeah, I would. Actually, that kind of reminds me of like Yakuza, because Yakuza 2 in particular was limited in print for a certain time. So it was really hard to get a hold of until they did the reprints, and then they were like going out for like $40 a piece, which was great. But like if they were to do like even more reprints, especially where they like say, oh, it's you could play this on this console too, that would be really fucking great.
That would be amazing. All right, are we done with this question? Go before I move on.
Yeah, I mean, unless if there's any other games that we might not have mentioned, like I'm sure people might want to play like shit like some horror games like Fatal Frame or like Cold Fear on like the Xbox or PS2.
Oh, you know what? I know one. Time Splitters.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They don't have an HD collection, so that getting those would be awesome. And they have multiplayer, so that too, and co-op campaign. I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I really want those games back.
Oh man, I'm kind of curious on a side note, like because I play a lot of the Musou games on PS2, and the older games, what they would do is they would have the Extreme Legends expansions. And there was this feature called Remix, and basically what that did was you click that option, and it asked you to pull out the disc for Extreme Legends, swap it out with the base game, and then swap it back so that way you're still playing Extreme Legends, and then it gives you like extra shit to do, so you could go back to the main like games like missions and stuff like that. And I'm kind of wondering if that would ever like fuck up the backwards compatibility or anything like that, or fuck up the console because it wouldn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, that would definitely be something interesting to see.
Yeah, because man, that's gonna get me thinking about that actually. Although I hope that's not the case where it does fuck up. I would hope that it would work, but I am curious if there would be any like compatibility issues with certain games like that.
It might even be something where they would like, because they do this with the Xbox One backwards compatibility, where if there's like DLC or something like that that's in the game, it's like downloaded with the update that you get. So they could explore as like a way of like adding that content without having to do that system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I guess that's something they could do because you could like you get all the DLC when you get like these backwards compatible games on Microsoft. Sounds right.
I do believe so. It's kind of a weird way, like how they do the like for Fallout New Vegas, for example. Like if you get the Ultimate Edition reprint, it's kind of a weird thing where it's like you get the disc. Obviously, you get one disc. You get two discs. So if you wanted to play it on your 360, that would be the way that you would get the additional content. But with the Xbox One version, it's you put in the first disc, and then it's just like you pop that out, put in the second disc, then have to go to the store, and then it registers that you have all that content without having to rebuy it. So it's just free to purchase. So that way you just re-download it that way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
anyway.
Not the best system, but it works for serving its purpose, I think.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I guess Brandel could read off number. What is it?
We're on number 6.
Number 6. Yeah, I forgot to cross out number 5. Number 6, Brandel.
Okay. Do you think a streaming service like PlayStation Now or Xbox Game Pass should be a type of medium to explore backwards compatibility for future console generations? Good question. So if it's more in favor of Xbox Game Pass, then sure, I'd be okay with it. Because you literally download the game though, unlike PS Now, you stream it. So
Didn't they change that?
Well, yeah, for PS1, sorry, not PS1, PS2, I think. Yeah, PS2 and PS4 games you could download to your PS4. obviously. But for PS3, it's still streamable.
That's idiotic. Yeah, they need to make that download no deal.
But again, though, the hardware issues prevent them from doing it, so I can't call them stupid for that, though. It's their fault for making it bad hardware, but what can you do?
Yeah, but I would say for PS5, I feel like this is less of an excuse by this point if they're doing it for that.
People said the same thing about PS4, and look what happened. Still don't got it.
I would say, yeah, if it's more like in line with the Game Pass, because the Game Pass you just download the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you even keep your game when you get it off of the Game Pass?
That
or?
I do not know. I'm pretty sure they remove it because you guys Renegade because he has more experience with that though, or I think Daybreaker part.
I think he said he still doesn't know. So,
but
actually, I unfortunately have no experience with that just yet. So,
you don't? Okay. So, yeah, nobody knows as of now.
I think Ren said he still held on to some of them. I don't remember.
Some of them still has a expiration date.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if I can download them, but because this is like a rental service basically, right? So,
It's basically
yeah,
like
I mean, I
Netflix
guess it wouldn't be a problem. It's just that if I wanted to like actually own the software for it, if it was available digitally, then let me buy it off of the store. You know, like I don't want to have to be like, oh well, I have this game or I'm playing this game, but I have to beat it in this time frame, otherwise I lose out on being able to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a thought to explore the concept. I don't necessarily want it to become the standard per se, but for instances like in Nintendo's case, you know, a lot of their medium, you know, your media was done via cartridges. So obviously, it's impossible with newer hardware, you know, to use the physical hardware. So it would be something interesting, but I guess I would want something more akin to like what the NES library via the Switch would be, to where maybe it's an application that, you know, maybe a little bit more customizing. So it's like an application that gives you a library and you can pick and choose what you want to download, but you just run it via that application, you know, so that way you're not clogging up your menus and things like that with a bunch of applications, like separate applications. You know, obviously, of course, you know, PlayStation fixed that a lot with the you know, folders and everything like that, but it would just be nice to like kind of have it all in one concise place, I feel, if they were to go that route.
For sure. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this, or?
No.
Alrighty, so James, if you want to read off number 7.
PlayStation, Microsoft, or Nintendo were to make a type of all-in-one console that played the library of their older consoles via emulation or physical media, would you be interested in or buying such a console? Wouldn't that be like a monopoly?
No, I think he means if one of the three did all in one type of console, not if all of them joined together and did a console. That's my impression.
Maybe? I'm not too sure about that.
I mean, if it was their
Yeah,
last
because it's
console,
asking about their older consoles, not
Oh,
like all of them join into making one console.
Yeah, I was the one who posed this question, so let me kind of set the idea. So, you know how like Nintendo has been doing those like the NES Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini. Well, what if they instead did a way where it's like Nintendo made a console that like either played your physical media, or, you know, you could download or had maybe game, you know, something like that, like an online service or something where you could pick and choose the games that you want, but it played all the older stuff from their library. So like you get like NES, Super Nintendo, you know, N64, GameCube, you know, what have you. So kind of like in a sense, like if Sony were to
PS3
take
sorry, I saw that in the chat.
if Sony were to say like do a console, I mean at this point people might argue, well, not it would just be a PS3, but like a system that was specifically dedicated to playing PS1, PS2, PS3 through HDMI, and you could use the discs if you want, or they have like some sort of shop where you can buy games from it.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of something a little bit more focused on the idea of backwards compatibility, but not necessarily something that plays next generation games.
So, I mean, I wouldn't mind that. Like, I think the problem with like when we're talking about like the quote unquote mini consoles, and this is both the problem with the like PlayStation 1 Mini and the NES and SNES minis, or rather both, all three. The problem with those is that there was only like a set amount of games, and they were charging like an absurd price for these things.
Yeah.
And if they had said like, okay, well, it gets preloaded with these games, but like say maybe let's just say hypothetically there was like a for the case of like the PlayStation 1 Mini, like a 120 gig hard drive, or even less than that, because PlayStation 1 games don't take up that much space. So let's just say like a 80 gig hard drive, which probably wouldn't cost that much to implement in there anyway. And they had a store where they specifically for that particular mini console, you can buy a bunch of these games as they update them, put them onto the backwards compatibility list, or availability list, or whatever. They have a more or less like a gypped version of the PlayStation Store where it's only focused on that kind of stuff. And you just pick and choose what you want to download and pay for, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was sort of trying to get at, because obviously with Nintendo they separated the NES and the Super Nintendo, and have unless you mod it, you have no way to upgrade the library of games that's available. So my whole idea would be to like, if they wanted to say cover, like Nintendo did like a system where it was like, okay, this system's going to allow you to play NES, Super Nintendo, and N64 games in an all-in-one system, and we're gonna like have it have like online connectivity where you have like a shop where you can download new games. We'll start adding to the library. Like basically like in a way like an emulation device. I mean, there's things like that exist, like RetroPies and things like that. Diving into the emulation side of things, but I was looking more at like an actual officially licensed product.
Yeah.
From the company. So that way it's not like a question of debate or moral ethics or whatever, what have you, of like, oh, is it a legal gray area or not? And no, it's like the company themselves are providing this option for people who want it.
Yeah, I guess in that case, like what Brandon was saying with like the PS3 Mini, like in this case, yeah, like that actually wouldn't sound like a bad idea in that case if they had like maybe some slight updates on the hardware itself and just let you buy like those specific like games for PS3, PS2, PS1, and go from
actually, I'm glad you brought this up though, because I remember I thought something really ridiculous way back when, before the whole PS4 came out. I thought, like, what if Sony made like a PlayStation R with Central Retro, and it's like a box where you could put in like disc for PS1 or PS2, or as access to the library to your PS3 where you download PS1, PS2 classics. And imagine that playing those games in HD. Like,
yeah,
I just had like
I would
that
be
wild
down for
idea
it.
years ago.
yeah, or at least like upscaling the games to 720 or 1080p. Like, yeah, that'd be fucking great.
Yeah, especially on like Sony's side, because it's been very much apparent that they have the means to make this happen. It's just a matter of their willingness to do so, and not do some weird shit like what they did with the PlayStation Micro or Mini or whatever the hell you want to call it.
That trash. I mean, that thing is only usable if you hack it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad like you all are bringing that up too, because like I'm sure you all have heard like Jim Ryan like go out to like he went to like a Gran Turismo event, right? And he's like, I don't get why people want backwards compatibility. Like all these games look old and ancient. Like it's like
He's a boomer.
yeah, it's like
People don't care about graphics. I want to play these.
Yeah,
Obviously.
and it's so funny that like that was kind of their stance for so long. and now it's kind of like they're suddenly changing their tune. It almost makes you think if they realize that there's actually a market for that sort of thing, and if they actually do it right, that people will be more interested instead of these half-assed attempts where like, oh, we're only going to get so many games for PS2 to PS4, but no online. Oh, we're going to, re-release, a small little nostalgic looking PS1, but you can't use any of your old discs, and you're set to the 20 games that may or may not be the proper versions for the proper country that you're in, and things like that.
I think Microsoft's the one that already finally gave them the kick in the pants.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to ask you guys like a side question kind of in relation to this. Like, obviously backwards compatibility is like a big deal, but how do you all feel about like them also doing like HD remasters? Do you think the like say original versions of those games should still be backwards compatible if the HD remasters are available?
I don't mind because if it's a botch remaster, then at least you have the original to play.
Mm-hmm.
Or even the two games I should say that I really feel show just if the team is dedicated enough to do this, where these kind of things can go. You look at Halo Anniversary 1 and 2. You can switch the graphics on the fly from the complete overhaul, HD overhaul of the graphics that they did to the original game, and it still feel like it's a more modern take. So I would love to
got
see.
A question about that.
Yes.
How does that work exactly? Because I haven't played Anniversary, so how do you switch the graphics on the fly?
I think it's literally just mapped to like the select button or something like that,
Are you
or the
talking
back
about for
button.
Halo?
Yeah.
Yeah, for Halo.
For Halo, you just push the back button on the controller, and it like fades to black and fades back in with different graphics.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you've seen all these HD remasters. We've got both the Crash trilogy and more recently Crash Team Racing. We got Spyro, and just in a few months we're getting Medieval. So it's and then of course sometime during winter, as announced via E3, we're getting Panzer Dragoons. So it's kind of like this idea, if like Halo can do it via Halo Anniversary, why can't these other games do that as sort of like just a way for people to be like, hey, look, I can play it and make it sort of feel like the way that it used to be. Obviously, I mean, of course, there were issues with the Crash trilogy, for example, where and even with CTR, where certain tricks and stuff like that for speed running and stuff don't work because the mechanics are slightly different because they're more in a quote unquote modernized, if you will.
More broken.
But yeah, it would still be really interesting to see if they offer that, because I mean it's obviously possible because with Samurai Showdown and CTR specifically for the PS4, they did offer the classic retro skins for certain characters.
There's one thing I actually want to note as well, that Microsoft, though, to their credit though, if they see something that is like worth investing to, they will put money towards it. Like for the Halo games, for example, one anniversary and two anniversary feel like remakes more so than remasters, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the second game.
They're pretty much 1-for-1 remakes.
Yeah, because with Crash is another example of putting a lot of money and effort into remastering games and not fucking it up to a certain extent.
Crash
Like
went even beyond Halo. They went 1-for-1 and added stuff like CTR is a whole new game basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that too. So and the Shadow Colossus. Those are rare examples of companies putting in a lot of money and actually care into the project and coming out better than original, arguably.
Trust me, and this is coming from somebody who was originally like, why the hell are they remastering Shadow of the Colossus if they're not going to really add anything? But I turned pretty quick. I was very just like, I mean, I platinumed it, it was just one of those things where it was like, holy shit, just the small intricate details, just seeing this game in a different light. Well, the frame rate, exactly, too. That was also a nice plus. But just seeing
isn't it a 60 FPS remake too,
yes,
or
yes,
remaster?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I remember on the original game.
Oh yeah, I
frame
mean,
rate dropped its ass off.
well,
as soon as
and that
it hit
was
the fan.
because I mean that was literally pushing the PS2 to the limits of its hardware. I mean that's the staple game. Like if you want an example of what the PS2 was capable of, for the most part, and be playable in a sense.
Yeah, the physics really killed it.
Yeah, but it was just, it was such a glorious example of like, holy crap, they can do so much with this sort of concept, and it's amazing the amount of time and effort that went into something like that just to completely overhaul it.
So I guess I'll read off the next question. We're on number 8. So as a follow-up to the previous question, wait, I'm sorry, Brandon.
Oh, nothing.
Oh, I thought you were trying to say something. As a follow-up to the previous question, have any of you ever heard of the Evercade, a handheld system that runs
Compilation.
a compilation of cartridges of old games with proper licensing? If you have, what are your thoughts on it? So I actually have not heard of this before.
I did leave a link in the document if you guys want to just skim over the website real
Yeah,
quick.
we talked about this the other day.
Did we? I don't remember talking to you guys about it.
I know we were talking about a handheld thing. Where
We talked about the other one where they were charging like almost $1,000 for. Or
Oh
like that,
yeah, that freaking thing.
where you could literally have buttons on all 4 sides or analog sticks on all 4
You could
sides.
have 2 D-pads.
The ultimate fighting game controller.
Yeah, no, that freaking and everything that I've heard about that has led me to believe it's a scam. So,
I got a better question though. Can it run Crisis?
Can it run Crisis? That would be
it apparently touted that it could run freaking Doom 2016 and 60 FPS at 720p. So,
is it the new like PC standard like The Witcher 3?
Yeah, I think so.
For most
Can it run
people,
Richard?
yeah.
Because that game looks really, really good, especially in
I don't know. I think the Can It Run Doom 2016 is the more accurate thing for me because that game's pretty.
Thing?
For me, that in any case, because that game is pretty demanding for what it is. But I just to comment on it, if you guys want to look over the website, I have actually been following the Evercade. I don't remember where I first heard about it, but I signed up for their newsletter, so I get emails about their endeavors and things like that. And so far, it's still in the concept stages. Well, at least I think it is. I mean, it's toting a Q4 release of this year, so we'll see. But
Not gonna lie though, I'm kind of interested so far.
yeah, the concept itself actually to me is really interesting. Like obviously they have a very limited like cartridge system right now, but the idea that one cartridge can net you a couple of actual games, that you're actually buying it via like a legitimate means, that like, you're not doing the whole you're a pirate because you're emulating or whatever, but you're actually possibly giving back to these developers and to these companies. And so far it looks like that they've got some good stuff on board so far. I'm going to follow it closely. I'm interested. Some of the stuff is kind of questionable. Like it said something about like only a 4-hour battery life. And I'm like, that's a little weak for a handheld system. Hopefully maybe
for retro games as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like that seems like a little ridiculous, but the pricing isn't horrible. It seems pretty decent for what it is. Like I believe it's for a standard unit and 1 game cartridge. It's like $79.99, which that's not bad considering some of these weird like off party, like the retro bit or whatever, the Bit Boy or whatever the hell the freaking thing is like $50. With a set amount of games, then you can't do any sort of customization to it, so it's actually a fairly decent price. And then I think it was like $20 per cartridge, which isn't bad, especially considering you're getting multiple games and not just one.
What are you talking about? You totally want to pay for a handheld with multiple analog sticks and D-pads.
Yeah, that totes that it can be an equivalent to the freaking rig in my mid tower.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You don't know.
But
yeah, my hands will be on fire because the processor won't be cooled properly and it'll freaking burn through the back.
You know that thing as far as like the idea of like backwards compatibility or like emulation through like handhelds, like that's always great too, because like you know, if you've ever seen like the Nintendo DSs or 3DSs, or if you use one of those, like you can play like all the old DS games on the 3DS, and then some of the older models of the DS allowed you to play like Game Boy Advance games on them, and that shit was great because like
Mm.
you could increase the brightness on those old games, and I think they ran slightly better, although Game Boy games didn't really have that many problems as far as like running, as far as I'm aware.
Some of them did, but just a testament of the times that the hardware was made.
Yeah, but stuff like that is always great because that's like another level of or a different perspective of backwards compatibility. Like obviously, this discussion was mostly on like the next gen consoles and stuff like that. Um, I guess you could look at that from the perspective of like because you had all mentioned like what about the PSP and Vita for backwards compatibility on PlayStation 5? Like, imagine if they could pull that off or bring that over to that console.
I mean, technically, they have the means. The PlayStation TV exists, and it does just exactly that, where you can play uh, PS Vita and PSP games in HD. So
Mhm.
it's possible. I'm not holding my breath, but it's definitely something that I think Sony should consider going forward.
Yeah, for sure. With that said, I guess we'll
I got a
have.
question actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
Would you guys pick up the new Soldier Boy console on the latest powerful?
I
The
already own
Soja
12.
game.
Yeah, man.
Oh my
Support the
god,
community.
that was
Yeah, I remember
that was a fiasco. Like,
Soldier Mario Brothers.
Didn't he actually make his own Game Boy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually,
well,
technically, no. It was based off Chinese.
well,
yeah, I
basically
know,
what
but-
he was doing, and the term is actually called drop shipping, and it's actually something that a lot of these companies do. And the problem that he was running into was is that no one necessarily would have had a problem with him drop shipping stuff. He probably made off with a pretty penny though, because I know that there were people who were actually like buying these freaking things because of the name. But the thing about it was is it came pre-installed with games, and that's what got him in so much shit. Is because
Mhm.
Nintendo is, especially Nintendo,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't want to hear I fucking fight me anybody who says otherwise. Nintendo are fucking hard asses about their intellectual property. So
They really are.
fucking much.
How many fan games have they killed?
They shut down fan games. They shut down emulation sites. Emulation sites that not only house their content but other companies' content as well that don't give a shit. So
Which is funny because they had mentioned that they were okay with like emulations and fan games before.
Oh, they're liars. They absolutely hate anything that's not their own.
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yo,
may
there-
they were maybe okay with that when Iwata was around, because I'm sure Iwata probably didn't have an issue with that. But since he's no longer, unfortunately, here, it's like it's a different entity now. And so it's obvious that I just had to laugh. Like, I sat back and just watched that dumpster fire happen with Soldier Boy. Like, he was so convinced nothing was going to happen to him, and it was like, no, nothing would have if he just offered these systems and they didn't come pre-installed with anything, but they did, and that's where Nintendo was cracking down the fucking hammer. So it's just like, yeah, Nintendo, like, they don't fuck around with that too much, like, anymore. And and to an extent, I mean, Sony, like, I don't really know on the Microsoft side of things because I've never dabbled in like homebrew or modding of Microsoft consoles. But like,
I can actually answer this for you with that one. They when the generation was a thing for those particular consoles, though, Microsoft, especially during the 360, got low ass hurt. Bill Gates told them to leave them alone during the Xbox One original era because he liked the idea of what these people are doing. Considering like this is Bill Gates, man, he's a very innovative guy, so of course he will like it.
I
But yeah,
think he
during
was
the,
actually really impressed too with how they pulled it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, so during the 360 though, Microsoft was more cracking down on that because by then he was gone from the company, I believe. So yeah, there were more ads heard about that kind of shit.
Yeah, and I know like the bigger controversy was like surrounding like the Dead or Alive games because of the whole nude mod bullshit and everything, and that's a beast in itself. Story for another
I bet
day.
it is.
But
I see nothing wrong with this.
but you know, speaking just from experience, you know, it's like with Nintendo, it's like they crack down hard. Like I actually know a friend who made the mistake of going online with his modded Nintendo Switch, and he got banned, IP banned. Like that system is a brick when it comes to playing online. He can't do so anymore. But like with Sony, you know, they Sony doesn't seem to really care a whole lot. But then there's like those weird things where like, oh hey, here's a PSP update. You know, we haven't supported this fucking system in 10 years, but here's an update. You know, here's an update for the PlayStation 3. We've dropped support for that like 12 years ago. But here's an update. You know, so they do little weird bullshit things like that where it's like they try to like curb the obvious fact that people are like homebrewing and modifying their PSPs, their Vitas, their PS3s and stuff like that. But then it's like, you know, especially because these, you know, these people are so fucking dedicated. It's like these communities are like, we're already on top of that shit. The minute they drop it, we're already fucking cracking it, you know? So it's
They
like,
can't- I don't know why they bother. You can't stop anybody.
yeah, exactly.
So anyway,
Real quick though, I got a little remark to make though. When Daybreaker said Nintendo's so answer about the international properties, yeah, they're just as bad as Disney with that kind of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Well,
Anyway.
Disney's another shithole, so yeah.
Anyway, why don't we have? I guess we'll have Daybreaker read off number 9.
Okay. Emulation is often stated as a, quote, means to preserve the history of video games by offering rare, unreleased, or even prototypes of games to the masses. Do you think that the companies in the modern era should have a similar outlook by means of offering legitimate backwards compatibility? I, for one, if they adopted that mentality, I think it would serve them well because a lot of people, you know, and being a part of the community that I have been in the emulation scene for so long, you know, it's like I do understand the legality of it, obviously, but it's like for lack of a better term, for a lot of stuff, this is the only means to play some games. You know, and not even just from like a retro collecting standpoint, you know, yes, retro collecting in of itself is becoming more and more expensive as years go by. There are games obviously that at one time were like $10 games that are now jumping to $20, $30, and some of those rare obscure titles are going even more expensive. One of the reasons why I haven't completed my Castlevania collection is because of that, because the two games that I want are obscure and they're freaking expensive as hell. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, if you guys have ever looked into the arcade side of things, you know, Capcom was notorious for doing this, but the reason that you don't see certain arcade machines around is because certain boards, or the majority of them, had basically self-destruction mechanisms implanted into the board that after a certain time frame had passed, that they basically fry themselves. You'll see this a lot with like Street Fighter Third Strike, for example, and it's a very, very delicate process to save that board from that happening. It is a very, very delicate process, and there is no guarantee it'll work. You know, so it with emulation, you know, it is something that does preserve video game history. You know, because especially too when you look at instances like the Silent Hill HD collection, where they had no source codes for either Silent Hill 2 or Silent Hill 3, and so what the result was is, oh, we have a beta build tucked away in a random fucking storage bin, you know, in the back closet of some freaking dude's house, you know, so that's what we had to use to freaking bring you Silent Hill 2, you know, as well as Silent Hill 3, and there was a plethora of issues because of that, because just, you know, very strange entity Japanese business is this, they just don't keep that stuff, you know, and so it's gotten better now, I think, in the modern era, where they're being a little bit more careful with their products. But then of course you look at Square Enix and the whole controversy surrounding Final Fantasy VIII, to the point where they had to remaster the fucking game even just to get it out, you know, because they lost the source code for it. Same thing happened to Kingdom Hearts, So it's one of those things where I do think that in a backwards compatibility sense, if companies really started focusing their efforts on offering this as a medium, it's a way to preserve that, because between companies losing source codes, things, arcade machines and stuff frying themselves, or the original hardware failing, copies getting destroyed, there's just so much stuff that time destroys, and it's so the best way to preserve it is by taking a stand on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Or releasing stuff.
Yeah, I would also say too, like even like looking at like the upcoming consoles and stuff, it would be nice to have like the ability to emulate some of these games. Like, yeah, granted, I get if they can't do like every single game, but if there are just games that were like specific to like that company's hardware or whatever, or in some cases where the say uh, the owner of that like property or whatever was okay with having it like go multi-plat via digital only and stuff like that. Like that would be great. It like I would pay for it. Granted, emulation you don't have to necessarily pay for if you know how to emulate, but it is something that like if these other companies like tried to actually jump in on, like yeah, I think I would be willing enough to pay for it. Anybody else?
Nope.
Nah.
No? Okay. James, you want to read off the last question?
Any closing thoughts?
No.
Yeah, I'd say like, I had a lot of fun with this discussion. Backwards compatibility is definitely something that is a very interesting topic, I think. And especially like, I know James, you would probably agree with like the potential of like online plays, very out there.
Damn right.
And all sorts of stuff, but mainly the big thing, and I'm sure you'll all agree with this, is just being able to play those old games on modern hardware for convenience sake.
All I want is all Sony to get their shit together and have all generations ready and hardware usable. That's it. I have nothing else to complain about if they do that.
Dave,
Until they
Ricker,
do
you got
something
any?
stupid, that is.
Dave, Ricker, you got any final thoughts?
Mainly just I will be monitoring the Project Scarlet as well as PS5 news closely, because with the talk of backwards compatibility becoming a little bit more prevalent in news media, I really do feel that it is something that they really need to consider. They really need to do and offer the best solution they can. Putting all this shit behind a paywall is not going to be enticing. But you tell us that, hey, this handful of games that you've had since you bought your first PS3 or your PS2 or whatever, they're going to work natively. Hell, like it would be a super selling point. Like, and I don't. The thing about it is, and especially on Sony's side, they have the means to do it. Nintendo does too. Like that's the really sad thing. Like you see Microsoft, and although that the libraries, like the 360 library is obviously a lot bigger, it doesn't include everything that I own. It doesn't include some stuff like a K Katana, for example, which is a bullet hell game. But there is a very diverse library of games there that you can play. And hell, I found out that some of those Xbox Live arcade compilation discs that I have, some of those games are backwards compatible. You throw in the disc and you get 4 games, so it's like they obviously know that means something to people. Now, granted, with the OG Xbox stuff, it was a little weird. Like some of the titles were like, they got 2 of the big hitters for me, which was Conquer Live and Reloaded and Panzer Dragoon Orta. But, it's just these things, all the data mining, all the hacking has shown, Sony has the means to run these games on their newer consoles. The same thing with Nintendo. They have these really weird, obscure ways. It's like, oh, here's GBA emulation, but it's stuck on the Wii U. Oh, here's Super Nintendo emulation in a handheld format, but it's stuck on the new Nintendo 3DS. So if you have an original 3DS, you're fucked. So it's just like they have the means to offer these to the public. And my question is why don't they do it? Like, obviously Sony has had these weird stances where they're like, no one plays old games anymore, but obviously Nintendo knows that people still do, otherwise they wouldn't offer stuff like the NES games, for example.
Right.
The problem with them is that they're behind the times with the kind of stuff, because every time new generation starts, though, they're playing catch up more so than being on par with.
And again, Japanese business is a very different beast in of itself as opposed to what goes on here in America. So there's just a lot of.
What he's trying to say is that they pull Yakuza, they take off their shirts and start showing off their tattoos on their backs, and then have a fight on the skyscraper.
Yeah,
that's how
and throw their wallet off of it.
Yeah, you're just gonna randomly see Japanese businessmen just start brawling in the street, beating up each other with traffic cones and bike railings and bike wheels.
I'm about to go get a business degree.
Yeah, that's how they solve their differences. It's like
I've trained in the ways of Yakuza. I'm very familiar with that franchise. I'd totally make it in Japanese business. Actually, there is one other thing before we do outros. Kind of in relation to Sony, since we kind of talked about this, and I completely forgot to mention this, but there was that patent too that apparently they had like something for all the consoles being backwards compatible for the next console. But I don't know if that was just a rumor or if it was just a patent and nothing had ever like come out of it. Did you guys ever hear about that?
That I might have missed.
Can you repeat that? I didn't catch
the patent about apparently all of the PlayStation consoles being like backwards compatible for PS5.
Yeah, I heard about that, but no, a patent usually means like the idea is there though, but it's unlikely it will be executed for various reasons. Like, there's plenty of patents Sony any company has, but won't go through with it.
Yeah, I mean, there was also apparently a patent for an alleged N64 Mini, and Nintendo has gone on record saying multiple times that the Super Nintendo Mini was the last of those type of plug-in and play consoles. So
they're fucking stupid.
I mean, Nintendo was also the company that had a patent for a U-shaped dildo controller for the Switch at one point. So.
I missed that one. The controller I only remember was the boomerang controller for the PS3. We
talked about this a couple of years back on the IAS podcast. I remember that much.
My butt could use a new one. Why not?
Dude, I still wish those freaking boomerang controllers would come out. How amazing would it be that you could throw the controller and it comes back to you?
Yeah, hit you in your fucking face. Yeah,
it will come back.
You could throw it in a fit of rage. It won't hit the wall. It'll stop just before it'll come back.
Yeah, I mean,
funny to see that. Hit you right in the
head. That is one thing that I will give credit to Microsoft, even though they did focus a lot on controllers this generation.
Controllers.
Really fucking funny that they brought back the Duke. So.
Well, and that wasn't even really them. That was Hyperkin that did it. But I mean, Hyperkin did it and got the approval to do it. So
I want to see the same like effort with the boomerang controller. Just bring that shit back. I mean, it's not as bad as like the Dreamcast controller. Like, God, that fucking D-pad sucks.
Oh God, don't remind me. I played fighting games with my friend for like 2 hours on mine, and fuck that.
Anyway, let's get some outros out and finish off. So you all pretty much know where to find me. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, and then Twitter, of course.
Where are you again?
On the very rare occasion on Twitch. Everything is biodevil_Dom. But where can we find you, Brandel?
You can find me at the nearest Soapland at Immortal Brandel on Twitter.
I like the honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing though, I'm honest. Now, excuse me though, I gotta get a massage.
Alrighty then. James, where can we find you?
At your house, behind you.
That's
But
a
also-
little bit alarming.
But also on Twitter at DevHunterJames.
Sometimes YouTube, right? Sometimes.
Very rarely.
Not really.
Not really, yeah. And then Daybreaker, of course. Where can we find you?
Well, obviously, you can find me in the coat rack in the men's aisle at Walmart. They don't know I'm here.
There
but,
are people that do that. They hide in that shit.
You know, I've lived here for about the past month, and they haven't figured it out. I don't know how. You know, I brought my desk and everything. They're just letting me stay here. But no, you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at Daybreaker Rain. I do all sorts of gaming content, so hit me up there. And if you care, you can also find me at minds.com. But you know, that's neither here nor there.
Alrighty. So now that that's all wrapped up, we will see you in the next discussion. See ya.
Take it easy, everybody.
Yeet.